Now the Steelers are out of their bye week. Can they take on the New Orleans Saints, and can they get the turnaround going? We talked to Brian Batko. I'm Chris Carter. We're both of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. This is the North Shore Drive podcast. If you want insights into the Steelers locker room and how they're looking before their first game to try to turn their season around against the Saints this weekend, there's no better place to do it than right here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Hello, welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Brian Batko. We are both of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and this show, the North Shore Drive podcast, you can find Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right here on this YouTube channel. You can also find it on Odyssey, Apple, Spotify, anywhere podcasts are hosted. But do check us out. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want all the daily Pittsburgh Post-Gazette sports content that's coming out all the time here. Like this video if you enjoy it. Brian, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Coming to you from the Batko basement, from the dungeon today. Yeah. Just a few minutes ago, my not even 3-year-old son yet opened the door and peeked down. So we could have an unexpected guest appearance on the show. Okay. If he comes down, we'll get his thoughts on Kenny Pickett, Andy Dalton, and whether the Steelers can salvage the season. He actually knows now when I ask him. Well, sometimes he knows. If I ask him who the Steelers quarterback is, he says Kenny Pickett. Sometimes he needs the Kenny to spark his memory, but so we're just drilling it into him now.
So does your son watch all 22 film with you?
I can't get him to watch like a play of a football game, let alone chew up the tape. But so we'll see what happens. I guess I'm sure he'll be watching the game this weekend with the grandparents while I'm down at Acrisure Stadium. So, hey, it hasn't been a good time to be a young Steelers fan. I mean, my daughter's not, she just turned 3 months. All she knows is the 2-6
pain.
Steelers. Yeah,
all she knows is pain. Okay, but let's talk about the pain that the Steelers have been going through. And Brian, there's the sentiment out there, like some people, and this isn't based in any fact. This is just fans who are just frustrated, but they say, oh, this Steelers team doesn't care, or they're not, that you see them laughing on the sidelines. They don't actually care about the losing right now. And I don't know. When I talk to these guys, I do sense a frustration. Like you and I both talked to Najee Harris, not just this week, but like over the past several weeks. And you could tell him, Kenny Pickett, everybody, the young guys here too. Like, on top of the old guys like Cam Hayward, who are always carrying that torch. There's a sense
for young guys because most of them came from college programs where you never lost. I mean, exactly. You look at Najee Harris, you look at George Pickens, and like you said, even Kenny Pickett is his final year at Pitt. I mean, they were rolling.
I mean, it's not, these guys are not sitting on their hands and just being like, well, there's nothing I can do this year. We just stink and I'm just gonna just accept that. That's not the sense that I get at all from this team.
You certainly
right, you hope not, because that's the reason they drafted a lot of these guys. Najee Harris wasn't just about picking a running back; it was picking a guy who could be a leader in the locker room. Kenny Pickett wasn't just about picking a quarterback; it was picking a guy who they wanted to lead in the locker room. What have you gotten the sense about if there's any building resilience going on right now inside this Steelers locker room?
It does seem like a loose group coming off the bye, and maybe that's kind of just a natural human response. You get some time away, you get to decompress. Naturally, you're going to come to work a little bit refreshed. So, I mean, it seems like they've got that going for them. Whereas, towards the end of, the end of things, you go back to that Eagles loss. I mean, everybody was feeling pretty down. And, to your point, I don't know that the effort waned, but they were downtrodden by the end of that game. I mean, it was yet another blowout. I think, people were, you hope not pointing fingers, but people weren't sure where they were going to go from there. And then they trade Chase Claypool. And I asked Cam Hayward about that yesterday morning. And he's like, nobody's spirits in here are changed. We still have a job to do, essentially. They didn't expect the trade to happen, but it is an opportunity for other guys. And this second half of the season is going to be interesting from that standpoint. And who is ready to kind of step up and make sure that this thing doesn't go off the rails?
Absolutely. We want to remind you, we're brought to you by the Acrisure Fan Advantage, which is the power to project one of our Post-Gazette Steelers beat writers into your home or office. Using augmented reality, you can get the exclusive pregame breakdown from a Steelers expert standing right in your living room. Get the latest insights on starting lineups, key matchups, and critical stats at post-gazette.com/Acrisure Fan Advantage. No apps or downloads, just insider access to Steelers updates at post-gazette.com/Acrisure Fan Advantage and get a real edge on this week's action. Brian,
And I'll tell you, Chris, one other guy who I talked to about this that I think is relevant, Miles Jack.
Ooh.
His first 6 seasons in the league with the Jaguars,
Mm-hmm.
they finished last in their division 5 of those times. Now, the other time, they won the AFC South, right?
Yeah.
And nearly made the Super Bowl. And as we know, ran roughshod over the Steelers along the way.
I still say Miles Jack was robbed when he picked up that fumble. He would have scored a touchdown. They would have beat the Patriots. They would have went to the Super Bowl. But they were playing the Patriots, and that was the problem.
That is quite an NFL to pay homage to our man Dave Damashek. I don't know. Maybe he's even done that one. I'm not sure, but So anyway, I was talking to Miles Jack about it, and I said to him, look, I know one of the big things for you when you came here in the offseason, you wanted to come to a winning organization. You felt like it was going to, kind of revitalize you a little bit. And unfortunately, the flip side of that is you were not with a winning organization for the first 6 years of your career. So I have to ask you, what sense do you get from this team that is in that, again, unfortunately for Miles Jack, familiar position of being in the basement like I am right now, in the standings. And he's like, yeah, I have been there. I've been on teams where guys just say, crap, I got to go to work today. I'm just going to mail it in. But he says he feels like this locker room, everybody's wondering, how can I get better today? What can I do tonight to study more? So, take it for what it's worth, maybe a grain of salt, or maybe you do think that he's the right guy to speak on the attitude he senses in that locker room. But he says it's been really, really smooth for guys kind of staying the course through all these struggles.
I think that it has to be smooth. If this team is going to, there has to be something about this team that gets it turned around. And you know what? This is the thing. And I talked to Arthur Moats earlier this week on the Locked On Steelers podcast, and he was talking about how, there was a stretch in 2016 where they went 2-5. And that led to them being 4-5. And he said Mike Tomlin buckled down. He said normally Mike Tomlin, he wants to hear what you think. He wants to be nice. He wants to consider what you're working on and your perspective on things.
That's easy to do when you're 5-2.
Exactly. When you're winning, he hears you out because you know what, you're earning that right. But he says when you start losing like that, Mike Tomlin, he starts finding you for every little thing. Oh, you were 5 minutes early to a meeting. Guess what? You're supposed to be 8 minutes early to a meeting. Oh, I told you to be on this line at this point at 2 p.m. so that we can get drill started. Oh, your feet weren't on the line. That's $1,500. He was giving me all this insight, and I do wonder, is Mike Tomlin doing that to this team right now? Or is he putting that kind of pressure on these guys privately? Because, that team was different. That team had a lot of Marquise Pouncey's, David DeCastro, Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was wondering that last night while I was writing this story. With Tomlin, you'd love to be inside his head anytime, but especially now because as much as he puts on this front at his press conferences that, hey, I've been here before, there's not much I haven't seen in the NFL, right? I've even been 2-6 before. But also, he's a guy that evolves and tries to grow with each experience and each passing year. And he always says each season is different. Each group of men is different. So, I would like to know kind of deep down how he is handling. It's unprecedented in the sense that, sure, you've been with this record before, but never with a rookie quarterback starting, never with this much youth on offense, never with all these moving parts. So, I would be curious to know if, inject him with some truth serum. What is he learning from this? How is he adapting? What is he changing, if anything? Or is he trying to be the same consistent guy day in and day out? I guess that's the balance any coach tries to find. And that's the fine line that you try to walk with any given team.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about that fine line that he's walking and the injuries the Steelers have, guys coming back and guys not coming back. We'll talk about that in just a minute here on the North Shore Drive podcast here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But first, We got to talk to you about our great sponsors. First of all, Liquid Death. Y'all know about Liquid Death. I've been talking about it every week on this show. Y'all better be getting some Liquid Death because all Liquid Death is the best mountain spring water brand out there. It comes in a tall boy can, just like a beer. It looks like a Miller Lite, but when you gulp it down, it's just fresh, ice cold water. When you put it in the fridge or put it in a cooler, it's awesome. And if you just need nice, refreshing water without that plastic taste that you get from a normal plastic water bottle, this is the route to go. And why do they call it Liquid Death? It's because it's here to murder your thirst, and it's here to murder plastic pollution all over the planet, because 10% of the profits from every can sold go to fight plastic pollution all across the globe. So go get some Liquid Death right now. It's refreshing. It's ice cold when you put it in the fridge. It's a great option for you. And you can go get Liquid Death at Target, 7-Eleven, your local county fair, or you can find a local Liquid Death retailer near you with their store locator tool located at liquiddeath.com/shore. That's liquiddeath.com/shore. We're also brought to you by Valley Pool and Spa. Wouldn't it be nice if the holidays were stress-free? You can get a hot tub, a swim spa, or a sauna from Valley Pool and Spa, which will help you feel like it is. Relax and soak in a hot tub or swim spa from Valley Pool and Spa before the snow flies. Refresh and rejuvenate in a Finlay sauna that is sure to melt your stress away faster than Frosty in Aruba. Save big now on all in-stock hot tubs, swim spas, and hot tubs by visiting valleypoolspa.com. That's valleypoolspa.com. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. We are both of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And Brian, let's talk about more about this situation. Like you talked about, where is Mike Tomlin? Is he towing the line? Is he being extra aggressive on these guys? Is he kind of being Mr. Consistency? There was a really cool clip. I forget, which service aired it, but there was a really cool clip after Kenny Pickett threw 2 fourth-quarter interceptions to the Miami Dolphins. They lose the game. They had multiple chances to win it. You see him walking off the field, and Mike Tomlin walks up to him and says, "Keep your head up." It's like in the tough times, you got to keep your head up and keep looking forward and keep fighting. And that's like that is the mentality you need your guys to have, and especially a young rookie. And part of me was wondering, was this what Mike Tomlin wanted Kenny Pickett to go through, to learn what these hard moments are like, to learn what it takes to all the things that it takes to win a game in the NFL, and see how he reacts to it. And I think that's a big part of this is, how does Kenny Pickett look in the second half of the season? Now that he's had a bye week, some time to kind of look back at his mechanics, look back at his basics, study himself a little bit more. How does he come out in this? When you talk to Kenny Pickett, when you hear him speak, Brian, where do you think his mindset is right now as a quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, the ups and downs of this thing that you mentioned there, I mean, that's unavoidable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure Tomlin wishes he would have rattled off 15 straight. Well, I guess it could have been 15 like Ben, but wishes he could have rattled off however many. He came in week 4, so 13 wins in a row to finish off the season. But that was never realistic. So he knew that there was going to be this bumpy ride for Pickett, and I think that's also a big reason why they drafted him in the first place, right? I mean, they believe in this guy as a leader, as somebody who's mentally tough. I think Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert both mentioned that when they picked him. And, let's be honest, they know that Pickett's he's not the fastest guy. He doesn't have the most arm talent. He doesn't have the biggest pure arm. And in this particular draft, he wasn't the most athletic either at that position, but they believed in the intangibles with him. And that's where this needs to kick in now. And, hey, maybe it won't be seen until later in his career. Matt Canada, for whatever stock you want to put into what he has to say at this embattled point in his season on Thursday, was talking about it's all about Kenny Pickett taking bad mistakes off tape and correcting it, fixing it going forward. And then he still thinks he's going to have a tremendous second half of the season and a tremendous career. So this is kind of where it begins. You got to see how he responds from this adversity. It's not unusual for him. He's gone through it at the college level, but hasn't necessarily gone through it to this degree in quite a while, because we knew that he had hit his stride those last couple years, and especially his final season at Pitt. So he's kind of relearning how to recalibrate here. And that's what he talked about, Wednesday after practice, that he didn't go home for the bye week. He didn't go back to New Jersey. He didn't go on vacation with, the fiance. He stayed at the facility, put in a lot of work to try to right this ship. And I do think he's going to have a better second half, one, with the experience that he has under his belt now, and two, you're just going to get some easier opponents than you've had to this point. The strength of schedule is not nearly the same, and it all should add up to Kenny Pickett making hay here over these final 9 games.
I certainly think that would be a heck of a story if he makes some hay here. And I think it could really start with the New Orleans Saints. They're not a good football team. They're coming on a short week. They're traveling to Pittsburgh. There's a lot of things that line up at this. The defense has not been as dominant this year as I thought that Saints team was going to be a little bit better, because I thought their defense would be able to clamp down on a lot more opponents, even if Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston were starting. But they haven't done that so far. And I think that this is
other than the Raiders. Yeah, they did shut out the Raiders, but I mean, I don't know what's going on in Vegas, and obviously Baltimore made them look very human, to say the least, last week. Then again, Lamar Jackson can do that too, even the best of defenses. So
I agree there. But let's also talk about the injury situation the Steelers have. Chris Boswell sent to injured reserve. Basically, Matt Wright's going to be there. Do you get a sense that this is a temporary injured reserve, or this is a season injured reserve?
I don't get the sense that it's long term, but those soft tissue injuries and the groin issues can definitely be tricky. Boswell's dealt with it before.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Wright is somebody who, when they signed him to the 53, you figured, okay, they're not going to waste an active roster spot on him for at least 3 weeks if Chris Boswell is going to avoid IR, and ultimately that's not what happened. So the kicking game, it's low on the list of problems right now for the Steelers. Although at the same time, the margin of error for them is so slim that one botched extra point, let alone a field goal, can turn results, can turn the outcome of games. So there will be, I'm sure, some pressure-packed kicks for Matthew Wright, but he seems to be a much better kicker than the undrafted free agent from UCF that the Steelers dealt with a few years ago out at Latrobe. So that's obviously one thing to monitor here for at least the next 4 games, which Chris Boswell has to sit out. But I'll also be curious, later today, I'm going to be heading down to the facility as soon as we wrap up here. Chris, is Miles Jack going to be back out on the practice field?
Big question.
Is William Jackson going to be able to go? That doesn't look good. Our coworker Jerry Dulac reported last night with a tweet that Jackson's probably not going to make his Steelers debut this Sunday against the Saints. So there are some lingering issues, no doubt about it. It's going to be a big day for them injury-wise. It was good to see Larry Ogunjobi back in limited fashion, because he can be a difference maker up front. That knee and before that, the back have been giving him some problems. So if he's able to go Sunday, that certainly helps the cause as well.
But of course, the big deal is TJ Watt. Everyone, Jerry Dulac reported he'd be back this week after the bye week. And there was rumors spreading around because he was seen in sweats and a hoodie on Thursday. So is he playing? Is he not playing? Is he sitting out?
And the interesting thing about that is, because he's on IR, they do not have to give an injury report.
They don't have to say anything about it.
You have to assume, right, Chris? You've been around this a while. There's a little bit of gamesmanship going on here, right?
Yes.
I mean, could have easily activated him at the beginning of the week, and at that point you would be subject to, is he full? Is he limited? Is he getting a rest day? Did something happen? Did he aggravate it? So that'll be interesting to see whether he talks after practice today. We know he did 2 weeks ago before the Eagles game and still ultimately took another game off. Terrell Austin, I think from listening to him Thursday that it sounded like TJ was going to play, but he did throw in there at the end, we'll get what we can out of him if he's available. So, yeah, I mean, maybe this isn't an open and shut case.
Listen, Brian, I've been dealing with Pat Narduzzi the last 3 years.
You know how that goes. Tomlin's getting almost as bad at this point, though.
They do not want you to know who's available and who's not. And there's smart gamesmanship to it. Like, if I don't got to tell you which of my best players are available so you can't game from them, I don't have to tell you. And when someone's on injured reserve, also the other aspect of this is that you don't take a person off injured reserve until as late as you need to, because they can work with you. They can be running first team the whole time. Like Devontae KZ was taken off injured reserve, I believe, Wednesday, right?
He had to be, because his window was right. His window was open 3 weeks ago Thursday.
Exactly. So here's the thing: is that they could have done that Sunday, they could have done that Monday, but by keeping him on IR, they were able to kind of keep whoever else on the. They didn't have to make another roster move. There's other guys on the roster that they're looking at and saying, okay, can he help on special teams? Can he help here? Can he help there? And then on the last day, it's like, all right, now DeMonte, you're promoted. Now we have to make a move and get rid of this guy. I think they're doing the same thing with TJ. It's just, you know what? We're keeping everything hidden. You don't know if he's actually going to be back, how much he's going to play if he is back. Meanwhile, there's one other guy on the roster we're able to get like a couple of extra days of looking at. And then when we're good and ready, then we're going to activate him. Yeah. And I think that's all that's going on here. I wouldn't be surprised if TJ Watt gets activated literally by the time we finish recording this, and then we're going to say, crap, we got to record this again.
See, I think they'll probably just wait until the 4 p.m. Saturday deadline.
That makes sense.
For your roster moves on Sunday. That's generally how they do it. And the other thing too, they did cut Ryan Anderson. Well, they waived Ryan Anderson on Tuesday, which was a pretty good indication that all the optimism surrounding TJ Watt was real. But hey, we know these things are difficult sometimes, and he's a guy, a classic case. Sometimes you have to save him from himself, right? Make sure he doesn't overdo it or rush back. But yeah, I certainly expect him to play. I would be surprised otherwise, but you never know. So we'll, obviously keep your eyes on the Post-Gazette website for the updates later today. And, I'll be there at practice. So check in with my Twitter and see what's going on with TJ Watt's status.
Absolutely. Do check in with Brian Batko and all of our reporters, Jerry Dulac, Ray Fittipaldo, and what they're saying at Steelers practice on Friday and Saturday. We'll see everything's going on there. But first, before we get to our predictions, we have to talk about Yinz's in the Berg. Yinz's in the Berg is the number one place for you to go and get your Pittsburgh sports apparel. If you want to celebrate the return of TJ Watt, go get yourself some TJ Watt gear.
If you want a Matthew Wright jersey.
And there's a Matthew Wright jersey. There's going to be very few places that you can find Matthew Wright here. Yinz's in the Berg is probably going to be the only one of the places in the world. And you can find
if not, they'll find a way to get it for you.
They'll find a way to get it for you. And there's two shops that they have in the Strip District, legendary places where you can go find all the Pittsburgh sports apparel, Steelers, Pirates, Penguins, Pitt, everything is up in there when you go to Yinz's in the Berg, and it's easy to find them in the Strip District. Or if you can't make it to the Strip District, you're not from the Pittsburgh area and you just love Pittsburgh sports, well, YinzersPGH.com is the place for you to go. You go there, they're a growing online store that grows every single week, so check out all their gear at YinzersPGH.com for Yinz's in the Berg, your number one place for Pittsburgh sports apparel, accessories, and much, much more. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. Brian, it's time to talk Steelers Saints specifics now. The Saints, like I said, they are underachieving a bit. And I wouldn't say by too much because I didn't expect them to make too much noise this year. They didn't go out and get a quarterback that was going to change their situation. Michael Thomas is on injury reserve. Jarvis Landry can't get healthy. This is a team that, and they're still dealing with the post Sean Payton era, and what's going on there. But this is a team that I think there are situations lined up for the Steelers now to be able to pull this off. You get it. They're coming onto this game on a short week. They're traveling to Pittsburgh. The Steelers are coming off a bye week. Mike Tomlin has won the game after the bye week for 5 straight seasons. This is lined up for the Steelers to do this, but it will come down to, I think, Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris in the run game. Can they just find something going on there? And can the defense be down? Can they take away Alvin Kamara? If they take away Alvin Kamara, I have a hard time seeing Andy Dalton light them up with the weapons that the Saints have at their disposal. I really think it comes down to those factors enough. They just need the offense to do just enough in this game. Don't turn the ball over a whole bunch. Have like 2 or 3 drives where you just put, you have good, long drives or a big play there, here or there somewhere. I think the longest Steelers touchdown this year has been 8 from 8 yards out, and that was the Mitch Trubisky pass to Pat Freiermuth. They need something like that, a spark somewhere on offense, and they need the defense to play at a high level. What do you think their chances are at doing that on Sunday?
I think they've got a chance. I do think it's going to be tough to run it on the Saints. I mean, you watch their front. I mean, Demario Davis is still really good. I mean, he's shooting those gaps and getting in there. That could be an advantage against the Steelers' offensive line, but maybe not as pronounced because, as you alluded to earlier in the show, actually, you just flat out mentioned it, Chris. Good job by you. The Saints are coming off a Monday night game. The Steelers are coming off the bye week. So really an inequity in the scheduling there. So if one team ever should be fresh and ready to go and the other should be beleaguered a bit, it's this week. So maybe the Steelers can get some push up front with a group that has been the same all year. Consistency with that O-line for better or worse. And If there were any nagging injuries or guys banged up, hopefully they were able to get that treated during the off week, and they should be replenished to face the Saints. So, they can do some things up front for sure with Cam Jordan, Shai Tuttle. Those guys have been around a long time. I don't know if Pete Werner is going to play. I guess his status is in question right now. Their other inside linebacker, he flies to the football as well, though. So if he's healthy, it could be tough sledding for Najee Harris. I just think it's a game that Kenny Pickett has to play really well. I think he's going to have to be sharp. I think Dennis Allen, their head coach, who's longtime DC in this league, he's going to know how to scheme it up against a rookie quarterback who still hasn't seen a ton at the NFL level. There's going to be disguises that he has to deal with. Tyrann Mathieu is going to be ball hawking, as you know. He's going to take chances. So sometimes you can take advantage of that, but other times he might jump a route and get you. So it's going to be really fascinating to watch from that X's and O's perspective. And when you look at the Saints offense, very curious what Taysom Hill is going to do in this game. We probably write and talk too much about a guy who plays about a third of the snaps. Like, I went up to Arthur Millette to talk about him the other day, and he's like, why is everybody asking me about Taysom Hill? Like, he's a wildcat quarterback. They don't do that much with him. He might throw a little seam ball on you, but just smash the run. That's easier said than done. We've seen him pop off at times earlier this year, and he's just a unique guy that is fun to watch, at any time. But it adds another layer of intrigue to this game.
It does not add an layer of intrigue. We'll see how that plays out. I look at this game and I see what the Saints have on offense. I think this is a game where the Steelers defense, when looking at their injuries, when looking at the things they need Larry Ogunjobi to be back. I think they do need Miles Jack to be back. But even if those guys aren't, this is a game where Cam Hayward, Devin Bush, those guys, they have to find a way to limit the run game. You cannot allow this Saints offense to be balanced this week. And I think if you do that, you forced Andy Dalton to have to throw a lot more in more predictable situations.
He did not look good. I mean, I watched some of that Ravens game. I mean, he looked like Andy Dalton at the end of the road, man. He's sailing passes over guys' heads in the end zone.
Yeah.
If Chris Olave is a baller now, like,
yeah, he is.
If the Steelers don't, to use Mike Tomlin's words from Philly, keep a lid on it, they could hurt him over the top, but that's also contingent on Andy Dalton getting it there to him. So I'm sure Olave will do his, he'll get his work underneath regardless. I do think the Steelers will place an emphasis on, playing cover 2 or whatever they have to do to make sure that they don't have another AJ Brown type of day happen against them. But that could lead to the Saints, possessing the ball, putting long drives together, and just nickel and diming them down the field.
We'll see. Andy Dalton doing that. I've heard from my man Ross Jackson, who hosts the Locked On Saints podcast. He was telling me, like, Chris, this is Andy Dalton's last straw. Like he said, it's
like, his last charge.
Yeah, exactly. This is Dalton's last charge, and he says if it goes bad this week, this is going to be Jameis Winston. It's going to be Jameis Winston after that. So I'm also intrigued. Do we see a desperate Andy Dalton? Because this is probably his last shot. I mean, he might get another job in the NFL, but he kind of lucked his way into being able to get this kind of playing time from the Saints just because of injuries and bad play at the quarterback position. I'm not sure how many more chances you get at that in a career, especially with how long he's been in the NFL. So I'm really interested to see how does he take on this game. Is he a little bit more aggressive, knowing that he might not have he has everything to lose, and so he has to prove himself in that moment. We'll see if the Steelers' pressure can get to him. If TJ Watt's back, that could can the pressure revive itself, because they have not been getting after the quarterback without him on the field.
And if Watt is back, he's got to go up against a right tackle for the Saints that he knows very well, Ryan Ramczyk from Wisconsin. They were both first rounders in the same year, 2017. So, which
is crazy.
Yeah. So a couple Badgers going at it, and also the biggest X factor for the Saints, Chris, the shout out that I have to give, JP Holtz, fullback / tight end. Shaler High School, my former basketball teammate.
I should have.
The Titans. He's cracking dudes when they line him up. He's on special teams. Just a do-it-all, gritty lunch pail guy. Could be the difference maker Sunday at Acrisure Stadium.
I'm sure you had to shout that. What's his play snap percentage?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but he does all the little things, and anything they ask him to do, don't sleep on him. They do have like 10 tight ends, Chris. Like, they've got Jawan Johnson from Penn State, converted receiver, Adam Troutman from Dayton. Is Nick Vannett still there? They
No,
had
I
Nick
think
Vannett
Nick
for a minute.
Vanette's gone. I think
Okay.
he's on his 12th team now or something like that. But you are right. They do keep a lot of tight ends, and I don't understand how that roster is constructed. But all that being said,
Taysom Hill's a tight end, technically. Yeah.
he is. He's actually a great fantasy pickup. Like if you
Yeah,
can,
I picked him up for my wife's team actually earlier this year, and that
Wait.
game that he balled out with 4 touchdowns or whatever was fantastic.
wait, you manage your wife's team?
Yeah, she's checked out. I'm like, can you name anybody on your team? She's like, she wouldn't be able to name Taysom Hill. I'll tell you that right now. She might. She also has Kamara, so this is a big game for her this week. But it's a free league. I would much rather have my guys in my own teams excel, and I don't have any Saints, so I'm not too worried about that.
There we go. Let's get our predictions in here. What you got? Who's going to win the game? What's your final score?
Yeah, I mean, everything I mentioned earlier about feeling like Kenny Pickett is going to come out of this bye week sharp and fix some of those mistakes. And then one thing you mentioned is that the picks that he has thrown hasn't been an issue with what he's seeing. He doesn't feel like he's misreading coverages. He's just they're physical mistakes, essentially. At least that's how he sees it. And I would tend to agree with him on that. And you could argue whether that's more or less concerning, I guess, for a young quarterback or rookie. Do you want to make in the mental or the physical, gaffes? So I do think he's going to play well. I think he's going to have his best game yet. Some would say that's a low bar to clear for him, but I think he's going to play mistake-free football. He's going to keep it away from the Saints, maybe even toss a couple touchdowns. And this Steelers defense, rejuvenated to some degree, even with some of the injuries going on. I'll go Steelers 21, Saints 17.
I'm going, a little bit lower scoring than that. I'm saying 17-13 Steelers. I think that you're right. I think Kenny Pickett makes some plays in this game, but the Steelers will not try to ask him to do too much. I think the defense has a good day. TJ Watt's back. One thing to look at, the Steelers are 11-2 in the last 2 seasons when he plays 60% of the snaps or more. That's ridiculous. If he plays 60% of the snaps or more, I think they're 12-2 after this game. And I think that because he gets after Andy Dalton, that frees up Cam Hayward and Alex Highsmith to do more, and that allows the secondary to prey on what they're doing. Also, I really think DeMonte KZ's return is a lot bigger than people are realize, because I think that there were a lot of packages that we saw in training camp they have not been able to use since, and that's going to allow for a lot more disguises, a lot more challenges and protections to attack the offenses in different ways.
Yeah, he's a good tackler, and his ball skills are right up. I mean, as soon as he steps on the field, he will have some of the best ball skills in the Steelers secondary. And anybody who watched the Eagles game knows they need a little bit of playmaking on the ball right now from their defensive backs.
They absolutely do. We'll see if that happens at Acrisure Stadium, 1 p.m. Sunday. Be there, because we will be. Pittsburgh Post-Gazette will be out in force. Thanks again for checking out the North Shore Drive podcast here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette YouTube page, podcast page, wherever you're getting this content. Know that you can listen to it anywhere. You can also watch it on YouTube. Thanks for checking us out. We'll be back Monday with Ray Fittipaldo, breaking down what happened in this game and getting his grades and responses. And is this the start of the turnaround? Find out this weekend, and then get all the recap right here on the North Shore Drive podcast after the game.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down below in the description.